The night my life changed forever began with steam rising off the hot tub and my heart pounding louder than the music inside the house. I stepped into the glowing water thinking I needed a moment of quiet, but the universe had different plans. Because the second my skin touched the heat, she lifted her eyes, soft, shimmering, knowing, and everything I had ever believed about myself cracked open under the weight of that look. My breath caught. My world stalled. And in that suspended heartbeat, I felt something awaken inside me, something I had spent years burying under routine, expectations, and fear. I didn't know it then, but my lesbian story started in that exact moment, in that hot tub, at a party I didn't even want to attend. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how human we really are, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support truly keeps these stories alive. I had arrived at the party already exhausted, from work, from being the emotional glue in my friend circle, from pretending every day that I was fine. 35 years old, divorced for 3, and drifting through life like someone waiting for a sign that never came. My friends always told me I needed to get out more, but social spaces felt like tight shoes I kept forcing myself into. That night, I agreed to go only because saying no felt even heavier. Inside the house, laughter rang from every corner, lights flashed, and everyone seemed radiant in their own freedom. But I felt disconnected, like I was watching life through a window. That's when I slipped outside to escape the noise. Steam swirled from the hot tub, glowing under string lights, inviting me with its quiet. I thought I'd be alone. But she was already there. Her name was Maya. I didn't know it then, I only knew she had this calm presence that wrapped around her like warm air. She was leaning against the side of the tub, eyes closed, hair wet and shining under the lights. I froze for a moment, not wanting to disturb her, but she sensed me and opened her eyes. There was no startle, no judgment, just recognition, like she had been waiting for me. Something in her gaze softened the edges of my anxiety. I slipped into the water at the opposite end, trying not to stare, yet unable to stop noticing her. The curve of her smile, the quiet strength in her posture, the ease with which she occupied space, like she belonged, like she knew who she was. I envied that so deeply it surprised me. I had spent years molding myself into who others needed me to be, a wife, a daughter, a responsible one, a woman who didn't question too much. But something about Maya's presence made me aware of a truth I had ignored for far too long. I didn't know myself at all for a while, we simply existed in that warm stillness. The muffled bass of the party thrummed through the walls, but the world around us felt muted, distant, safe. It was strange, how comforting silence could feel with someone you had just met. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. As the minutes passed, I found myself reflecting on the patterns of my life, the relationships that had felt like mismatched puzzle pieces, the loneliness I carried even when I wasn't alone, the way I avoided mirrors not because I disliked my reflection, but because it reminded me of a life lived halfway. And then there was Maya, a stranger whose presence made me feel more seen than years of companionship ever had. The water shimmered between us, lit golden and soft. When she shifted closer, not touching, just closing the distance by an inch or two, something inside me fluttered, fear, curiosity, recognition, longing, all crashing together like waves. I didn't understand it yet, but it felt both terrifying and right. Like my soul exhaled. As we sat there, I felt emotions bubbling up, ones I had pushed aside for too long. All the suppressed questions I never had the courage to ask myself. Why did my heart always flutter around certain women? Why had I felt disconnected in every relationship with men? Why did I feel more myself in this moment with a stranger than I ever had with someone I loved? The truth scared me. It whispered at the edges of my mind, trying to break free, and I tried to push it back down. But the warmth of the water and the gentleness of her eyes made hiding feel impossible. Though we barely exchanged a word, something passed between us, quiet and transformative. She gave me a small, knowing smile. And that was the beginning, the first spark of an awakening I didn't know I desperately needed. The rest of the night moved in a blur. People came in and out of the hot tub, but I remained anchored in that early moment. When Maya eventually stepped out of the water, wrapped in a towel, and gave me one last look before walking back into the house, my heart followed her even as I stayed seated. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again, and that uncertainty burned strangely, deeply. Days passed after the party, each one revealing cracks in the facade I had built around myself. I replayed the moment in the hot tub over and over, the way she saw me, the way I felt around her, the strange sense of peace that had washed through me. I began questioning every assumption I had ever made about my identity. At first, it terrified me. Then it liberated me. I started noticing things I had long ignored, how my eyes lingered on women more than I allowed myself to admit, how emotionally disconnected I had been in past relationships with men, how fulfilled I felt by deep female friendships compared to romantic partnerships. It was as if my life had always been painting a picture I refused to see, until Maya's presence forced me to look at it openly. The transformation wasn't easy. It was messy, confusing, overwhelming. There were moments I cried without understanding why, moments I felt guilty for not realizing sooner, moments I feared I was too old to discover something so fundamental about myself. And yet, deep down, a quiet voice whispered that it was never too late to become who you truly are. Weeks later, fate returned what it had borrowed. I saw Maya again, unexpectedly, at a small cafe near my workplace. She recognized me instantly and smiled in that same warm way that had unraveled me in the hot tub. We really talked, for the first time. About life, about fear, about authenticity. And as I sat across from her, I felt something shift from questioning to knowing. She didn't save me. People don't save people. But she illuminated a door I had been afraid to open. Our connection grew slowly, gently, without pressure or labels. She was patient as I navigated emotions I had never experienced before. She let me take my time. She showed me that understanding yourself isn't a race, it's a homecoming. The night I admitted to myself that I wasn't broken, confused, or lost, but simply discovering my truth, I cried with relief. For the first time in my life, I felt aligned with myself. And I knew I owed that moment partly to her, her kindness, her presence, her quiet courage that gave me permission to be brave in my own way. As our relationship unfolded, it wasn't all perfect. I struggled with fear of judgment, with society's expectations, with the weight of starting over at 35. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered that moment in the hot tub, the moment she looked at me like she could see the parts of myself I kept hidden. That memory became a lighthouse, guiding me toward a life built on truth rather than fear. If this story has touched your heart or reminded you of your own hidden strength, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these emotional journeys reach more people who might need them. Before the ending, I have one special request. Comment below what part of the story stayed with you the longest. In the end, my journey wasn't about Maya alone, it was about reclaiming myself. It was about realizing that life doesn't end at 30, or after divorce, or after heartbreak. Sometimes it begins in the most unexpected places, like a hot tub at a party you didn't want to go to, or a single look from a stranger becomes the spark that lights the path back to yourself. And now, whenever I think about that night, I feel gratitude. Not just for her, but for the version of me who stepped into the water hoping for quiet, and instead found truth. My lesbian story didn't just begin in a hot tub. It began